This topic is about few terminologies which are used in programming language, and those are identifiers, reserved keywords, statements, variables, constants. Let me explain you one by one. Identifiers are actually you define in your programming construct. For example, if you have to provide a unique name for a value, you can do so by identifier. You have no idea what is variable, so before we start our Apex programming language, we'll have to understand few things, and those I have compiled as a variables, constant, identifiers, reserved keywords and statements. So first we should understand variables. If you see this, this is a generally a mathematical expression in which we have a expression left hand side and right hand side, in which right hand side would be evaluated based on the value provided to that particular identifier, that is in our case is x. So if you pass x as 1, it would actually result in 2. If you see next, if you pass 5, it would result in 6. So if you see few common thing here, that this is a this when we pass something like x equals to 1, x equals to 5, so those are called variables. So its value changes, and because of this change we call it variables, because this can hold variable values, and based on that it returns something. So if we see what it returns, returns a number, and to be precise it returns an integer. But if we change it to something, let me change that 1.5, it returns us a decimal number. So few things are clear here, that these expressions when after evaluation gives something of some nature. But this is what as a human we can understand what how that can be evaluated from a mathematical point of view, and in general sense also we can say this would return this. But yes, for a programming language we'll have to tell that language, or a technical word is compiler or interpreter, that this variable is of this kind, in our case of integer, and in another example it is of decimal type, and it also result in integer and decimal. So because this is a strict type language, so we'll have to declare what kind of value a variable will hold. So This is about variables. Now same thing is true for constant. If you see this here, pi, which is a universal constant which has a value of 3.14, its value is never going to be changed. So this is kind of constant which we can define in our you know our business problem which we need to solve. Now we talk about identifiers. So if you see here X is a identifier which is identifying that particular variable. And here in programming language it has a rule, certain rules through which we can define our identifiers. Like, you cannot start it with a number, you cannot start it with a special character, you can always start it with a character. So depending on the programming language, this identifiers definition gets changed. So this is about identifiers. Now there are few more things. When we learn a language like English, it has few words and it has a dictionary of words. So those are like fixed words which we can remember and we can use as and when required. But when we define identifiers or a variable, we cannot use these reserved words. I mean, in programming language, few few are reserved keywords which we cannot use while writing program for defining our identifier. Now statement is actually a single line which actually evaluates and then it moves to next statement. And actually there should be some kind of separation, or compiler or interpreter should know that this is the line and this is ending here, and then there should be a new line which should be evaluated. So these are few terminologies which we should always remember, and I'm going to explain you this through our developer console. So let me open that. So first thing first, let me define a integer variable. As I told you, we'll have to define what kind of variable is this. So we'll have to use a reserved keyword integer which we can use to tell Apex that this variable is of this kind. So now integer, let me provide a identifier for this. So let me call it identifier for now, and let me store one value over here. So it says lots of things. I mean, if you see, this is an identifier. So let's see the variation. Integer my var equal 3, integer my var equal 4, integer my underscore var equal 5. Let me write another. So if you see these variations, you would find one thing here, that this is a correct identifier, this is also a current identifier, because we can use underscore in our identifier. But let me define another. We can do so. This is also wrong. So this is right, this is not right, as well as this is not right, because if you see, this is an integer and here it finds my and then space. So clearly if we see this, this doesn't make sense when actually human reads to it, read this. Same thing is with compiler or Apex language. When it actually encounter this two words separated by space, it would result in a error, which is kind of compile time, which may be compile time error. And I mean, if that is a compile time error, it won't allow to run the program. That's a different story. um, but if you can understand, that's good, otherwise please ignore that. And here if you see this, we are using a special caret that is also not allowed. So this is how we can define a variable. Now if we want to solve the problem like we had, this is a comment. Whatever statement is not applicable, I'm making it commented. One more thing, here if you see, this is a end of line. Let me comment this as out, because it would also consider it as a part of that particular statement. uh, so here it sees that if it encounters this semicolon, it means that statement has been ended. Now go to the next statement, and again if you see, this has semicolon again. So this is our statement, and these lines are executed one by one over here. So you have learned how you can define identifier, what you should use in identifier, what are the reserved keywords, something like this. I can decimal. If I define it decimal and I store this, it won't consider it. I'll have to put a decimal point. There are other type of variables here as well, like string. We would see those line by line. But here, yes, if you see these things, you would understand better what I have talked about. Let's move ahead and see few more things which is necessary to understand. And if you see this diagram, here I have shown memory allocation of variables. So if you see here, I have defined a variable a which stores 11 and which is of integer type. Similarly, I have defined a string variable which stores string of characters, and there is another kind of variable which is a reference type. So if you see here, this is being stored here in this heap area. Let me correct this. So this is kind of a stack. I mean, I have written a program in which I have defined this variable, and I have defined a two variable actually as per this diagram. So this is being stored in memory. So when we define a primitive variable, it actually holds atomic value or a single value which can be kept into memory this way. And that is this is the data structure which is called stack, which holds the value. Now if you see this, this is a complex data type, and in our case a object of Salesforce. So that would be stored in a area which is called heap area. So here only the reference of that particular object would be stored here, and there would be another memory chunk where this the exact data of this complex structure would retain. So that is called heap area. So this is how memory is allocated for the variables based on their types, simple and complex. I hope this would make you understand the basic concepts of any programming language